Hello, welcome back. Unless you're new here, and then welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Amy. As promised, this is going to be the second video in my intermittent fasting series. Today's video, we're just going to do an update of what the first 45 to 50 days of intermittent fasting have looked like for me, where I started, where I'm at now, and just kind of a rundown of that. So let's just jump into it. So when I first started intermittent fasting, what happened was a very good friend of mine and I were having a little coffee and play date with the kids, and kind of scrolling through Facebook and came upon a post that a mutual friend of ours had posted about her intermittent fasting journey. And my friend said, "Hey, do you want to do this? What do you think?" And so I said, "Yeah, I mean, it sounds, let's look into it." So we both started on the same day. That evening I came home, and she texted me, "I just started my first fast." And I said, "Okay, well, so did I." I started my first fast at like 10 o'clock in the evening. I only did 14 hours for the first few days that I fasted. I happen to have a migraine that had coincided. I think I mentioned that in my previous video. And so fasting for longer wasn't really an option at that point. But the first 3 days I did 14-hour fasts. On the fourth day, I moved into a 16.5-hour fast. And from there, I've always kind of kept it at 16 hours as my goal. I set my goal. I have a little app that I use. I actually have two apps that I use on my phone. If you have an iPhone. Actually, I think the Life app. Let me look real quick and see which ones they are because I can't remember now. So there's two apps. I know for sure one of them is available on Android and iPhone because my husband uses it and he has an Android. It's called Zero. And it just tracks. You can adjust for different fast lengths, like look, I just hit my fasting goal for today. You can adjust for different fast lengths, like an 18.6 or a 16.8 or a 24. And when I say that, those numbers, what that means, the first number is the length of time you fast, and the second number is the amount of time that your window is open to eat. So like I typically do a 16.8, which is a 16-hour fast followed by an 8-hour window. Though I have started shortening my window a little bit this week. It's also leading up to my cycle, and so I have really been struggling to get a shorter window and not be hungry before my fast is over next. So maybe I'll try that again later. But like I said, I always shoot for a 16-hour fast, and then if I go longer than that, that's fantastic. There have been days where I have just been unmotivated to keep my window closed, and I kind of wanted to get back on sort of a schedule. Excuse me. So I would do a shorter fast, like a 15-hour fast. And then there have been days where I decided I wanted a midnight snack, and then I just fasted for 16 to 18 hours the next day. It just depends. That is, I think I've literally said this exact thing before. That's the beautiful part of this way of life and this lifestyle, is that you can do what you want. You can do what works for you. If a 16-hour fast with a 3-hour window followed by another 16-hour fast and then a 5-hour window and a 18-hour fast, like that's fine. You can do that. It doesn't have to add up to 24 hours. Some people focus just on their eating window. Like, I'm only going to be eating for 3 hours today, and that's their goal, is to only eat for 3 hours, and then however long they fast is however long they fast. Some people focus on how long they're fasting. Anyway, without going into too much of that, because I will do a video that kind of goes more in depth on fast lengths and the benefits from it and the different processes that happen, but today I want to focus on where I've come from. So by week 2, I was down 3 pounds. I was at an average of 190 pounds. I started out at 193. I am 5'4", so that is considered, with BMI and whatnot, to be obese. Now, I don't necessarily, that's a different topic. We're not going to get into the whole BMI thing. But anyway, I started out at 193. By 2 weeks in, I was about 190 pounds average. So when I weigh myself, what I do, because weight can fluctuate day to day, depending on, like, for women, where you're at in your cycle, how much sodium you've taken in, that can cause, water retention and bloat, stress, things, just a bunch of different things can affect your weight from day to day. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like, if you're up a pound, it doesn't mean, oh, this isn't working, I'm not losing weight. So I will weigh myself however many times during that week. Usually I get up in the morning and weigh myself, but like this morning, I forgot, so I didn't write it down. But what I would do is weigh myself daily, and then at the end of the week on Saturday, I will take all those weights from the week and divide it by however many times I weighed. So if I weighed 5 out of 7 days, I'll take them all, add them up, divide it by 5, and get the average weight for that week. So by the end of week 2, which was actually about 10 days in, but I'm just gonna call it the end of week 2, I was down 3 pounds. So I was at 190 pounds average. On day 10 was the day that I actually took my first measurements and my first before pictures. I didn't start it right away because I was like, well, I mean, you know, we'll see if this works. We'll see if I can stick with it. And so I didn't get them right away. I'm a little bummed about that because I'm sure that I lost some inches and some water weight and swelling, inflammation and stuff in the first 10 days. But I will, if I can figure it out, I'm going to put up a picture of my first, or me at the 10-day mark. So this is 10 days into intermittent fasting. This is going to be the only picture I'm going to put up of me in my underwear. Probably. I say that. Maybe I'll put it more. I don't know. So this is the picture of me starting out intermittent fasting. 10 days in, this is where I was at, kind of my baseline. I don't have pictures of me really before. There's a few pictures that were taken last summer and maybe the summer before, where I'm standing with people and I'm kind of hiding behind them, or you know, one of the kids snuck up behind me and got a picture that's not flattering. But I just didn't really pose for pictures. I wasn't in pictures because I didn't feel good about myself and I didn't want people to see where I had gotten to. Moving forward, at week 3 I was down a total of 7.5 pounds at an average of 185.6. By week 4 I was at an average of 184.1. At week 5, I hit 182.9. Now this is where I want to point something out. At the end of week 6, my average weight was 183.5. That is 0.6 pounds heavier than my average from the week before, which could be discouraging to some people. But I had started taking my measurements at that day 10 mark too. And from day 10 to the end of week 6, where I had gone back up half a pound, I was down 2.5 inches total in the measurements that I was taking. So it doesn't mean just because your weight isn't doing what you think it should be doing, it doesn't mean there's not good things happening. It doesn't mean you're not having non-scale victories, you're not losing inches, your body's not doing recomposition and kind of, you know, healing itself. A lot of times a stall in weight, what I've found, a stall in weight is a period where my body's healing. It's doing something else important that it needs to do that doesn't necessarily reflect on the scale. Week 7, I was back down to 182.9, which is where I'd been at week 5. So I was back on track there. And by the end of week 8, which is kind of where we're at right now, I was still averaging 182.9. But I was down an additional 2.875 inches from week 6. So there was, from week 5 to week 8, I lost no weight. I gained half a pound, I lost again. But I'm at the same spot where I was for that average. So there was no change in pounds, which might seem a little discouraging, but I was down 5.375 inches. So just between 5.25, 5.5 inches down in those 3 weeks on my measurements. I'll put up a picture here of me. This is a comparison, a side-by-side, the day 10 picture, which you've already seen, and the one next to it is day 35 or 32. I can't exactly remember. But this is about roughly 25 days apart. You know, so just over 3 weeks in these pictures. And you can see just the massive amount of difference, body recomposition, reduction in inflammation. You can see where the inches have come off. And that's overall. So since starting intermittent fasting in mid-March, I am down 10 pounds. I am down 18.875, so almost 19 inches overall in my measurements. So it's working. It's working for me. I feel better. I've noticed things that aren't related to, you know, my weight and measurements. I've noticed that I crave less sugar. I just don't want it. Like, I eat sugar still. I eat sweet treats every once in a while. I eat things that I want to eat. I basically eat whatever I want to eat, but I just don't feel like sugar doesn't sound good. Like, one of my children put some creamer in some coffee and brought it upstairs, and I smelled it and I was like, oh Lord, what is that? That's nasty. Like, it just doesn't sound good to me, which is good because sugar is really inflammatory, and you keep eating that, it's not going to be helpful. I feel like my skin is healthier overall. I have a better complexion. I feel like it's not as dry. It's kind of evening out, and that's fantastic. My clothes fit better. My belt is too big. I started out with this belt that I'm wearing, and it was, when I bought it last spring, I think, I didn't have to have it tightened all the way down, but I didn't have to have it on the loosest setting because I don't like belts on the loosest setting. I just buy them the next size up and tighten them down more. But I had a few notches, and then when I started intermittent fasting, I was at, you know, I had one notch more where I could tighten it down. Now it is tightened on the last notch, and I can pull it this far away from my waist, and it's just loose. So, I mean, that's fantastic. I suffer from chronic migraines, so I get frequent chronic migraines. I've had points in my life where I would get a migraine every other day. Recently, I was getting them 2, maybe 3 a month, usually kind of centered around my cycle. But I have not had any migraine medications, like abortive medications, to treat them in quite a while. I think since maybe January. So I've been trying like holistic approaches. But since I started intermittent fasting, save the migraine that I had the day that I started, it just happened to work out that way. I've had two migraines, and I've been able to get rid of them with just rest, ice, Motrin, and fluids, which for me, those things never worked before. I had to have the abortive medication, and sometimes I even had to end up going into the emergency room for fluids and anti-nausea medications and pain relief. I haven't had to do that, and so to me that's fantastic. That, like, in and of itself is fantastic. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. I'm about 8 weeks or about 50-ish fasts into my intermittent fasting journey. So next week I will come back on and I'll check in with y'all, and we'll talk about week 9, where I'm at there versus where I was at the end of this week, at the end of week 8. We'll talk about what my goals are moving forward for the next week, and just how I'm feeling, how things are going. If there are any other videos or any other information that you'd like to have, questions that you have, leave them in the comments, and I will look at them and we'll talk about it. We'll get the information out there for you. So far, this has been a fantastic journey for me. I like that even when I'm not seeing scale victories 1, I'm seeing non-scale victories 1. So I'm losing inches, I'm feeling better, I'm able to move more. The other day I bent down and put both my sandals on, strapped them onto my feet, and stood back up, and I was still breathing normal, which is amazing. Like, who doesn't want to put their shoes on without hyperventilating? It's awesome. I also plan on doing a video with my husband here, because I was looking at pictures last night. We went to Pennsylvania, or not Pennsylvania, well, we were in Pennsylvania. We went to New York and then came back down. We were in Pennsylvania in February. And one of the waitresses at this cute little, like, smorgasbord thing that we stopped at, she took our picture, and I was looking at it. Both my husband and I just look so puffy. And it's so funny to me because he's like, oh, I don't know, and, you know, maybe I've lost a little bit, but I can, like, his face, just looking at the picture, I can see the reduction in inflammation. It's insane. Plus, he's got a little tiny waist now. I'm a little jealous, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, that's our update for today. Thank you for joining me back here. If you're returning from any of the previous videos, and if this is your first one, thanks for watching and coming through this with me. I hope to see you all back here to follow me along in my journey and keep up to date with me. And I will catch you next time. Bye.